Hey guys, welcome to Approach the Nerd. It's Maria Park, and we are talking Lucifer season 6, final season, which breaks my heart. No more Lucifer unless you read the comics. And yeah, we have a lot to talk about in this. Now, this season actually for me was one of the best seasons. I do have questions, and we're going to talk about that, but definitely one of the best seasons of Lucifer to date, which is sad because again, it is the last season. This is a spoiler review. If you have not seen Lucifer season 6 on Netflix, watch it first and then come back. All right, so this season deals with a lot of stuff. It deals with like abandonment issues, potential, like the fear of abandonment issues. There's time travel. There's we got ghosts. We've got dealing with the past traumas of things that we need to figure out and be able to move on. There's a lot of going on in this series. So let's start with what's happening with Lucifer. So when we left to season 5B, Lucifer was dead set on being God. But there's always something that distracts him and prevents him, from taking the throne. So he keeps putting it off, which is kind of a sign that he doesn't want to be God. Everybody knows it, but he doesn't want to be selfish. And he really thinks that at the time that maybe that's what he's meant to do. And Amendiel, who I think should be God, from the get-go. I thought, like, literally as soon as God decided to retire, I was like, well, why isn't he going to be God? He's transitioning into a new life as a police officer. So he's gone through the police academy. Before Dan was murdered, he had filled out a form for him to join the police force. And he gets partnered with this woman named Sonia, who's kind of a hard ass. She's a senior. She should have been detective. As a matter of fact, she was offered a seat in the Palisades, but she wanted to stay closer to home so she could be near the hood because she knew that there were a lot of cops out there that were dirty. And she thought she could make a difference because at least she would be there to see it or be able to speak against it, yada, yada. So a good storyline there, but it's interesting because without going into a full, very long recap, let's just talk about stuff with the characters and their journey, things that kind of got resolved in closure and all that stuff. So with Sonia and of course, Mandiel, he wants to be a cop. He feels like that's what he needs to be because he wants to be near his son, Charlie. And if he's God, he feels like he'll be like his dad and not be able to be around because you have to rule from heaven. For some reason, all of them have this thought that they have to rule from heaven, which, progressive, just evolve, But long story short, with this storyline, they run into the detective that was pretty effed up and racist towards Amendiel. Like, I think it was 2 seasons ago, might have been 3. But this was a really racist cop who they now found out got promoted to detective. And it got a lot of people feeling like we always saw how the police worked and the detectives worked from Chloe's perspective, who is white and who is legacy. Her father was a cop. We never saw it from a POC's perspective. Like, we did have Ella, but we didn't really see it from that perspective. And technically Dan as well is considered a POC. But like, I love that we actually got to see the other side because even Chloe did not realize just how, the disparities basically and the systemic racism that was not being addressed in, even her own precinct. So I love that storyline touched on that. But the question that I have is when, when he decides to go to heaven and become God in this, what did they tell Sonia? Because they were partners. They were in on it together. They were going to, make the system better. And then he's just out. So he's God now. And now he did ask Chloe to basically help her. And we see in the season that she does. She decided to stay being a detective even before Lucifer decided to give up being God. And she eventually becomes a lieutenant. Like within the 9 months that she's pregnant, she's lieutenant because she's still pregnant, like heavily pregnant. So before she gives birth, she becomes lieutenant. And then we see that she promotes Sonia to detective in that precinct, which is what she wanted all along. So and basically throughout the whole start to finish of this season, we thought that Sonia was just going to be like an 20-year, 15-year, 10-year, officer in blue, even though she's very qualified to be a detective. So yeah, I did like that they addressed that. we'll get to Lucifer and Rory in a minute. So I'm just trying to get all the other characters. I love that we got to finally see that Ella was not as naive as they made her out to be. She had a board, like all the secret boards we always see in all the dramas. I'm going to call it, if you watch Smallville, we'll call it the Wall of Weird, where she literally starts writing down who she thinks everybody actually is. Like, Emmerdale, she's like, oh, Emmerdale definitely is an angel. And she's like, Maze, demon. Eve, question mark. And so she's been tracking all of them and basically come up with conclusions on what everyone is. And throughout this entire season, Ella is really the one person, which is ironic, that had noticed that something was going wrong with the world because God's not ascended. So there's nothing keeping things on track, like with frogs falling out of the sky. I mean, down to mosquito population going out, or dwindling. She was the one basically to call all of that out. But nobody ever confided in her what they really were. And so at Maze and Eve's wedding, we finally see a scene where she's so drunk, she's just in her feelings, and she just says, I know which all of you are. I just know who you all are, and then we get to see how she deals with that. The fact that, every bit of information that she finds out, like her ghost BFF being the angel, actually being real, the angel of death, everything that they kept from her, she is so hurt that she wasn't in the club, in the clique, basically. And I thought that was a really interesting way of showing Ella's, attachment and, kind of like connection and loyalty that she thought she had to everybody, and her feeling like she didn't have it back. So I thought that was really interesting. And I love that it was Carol, her love interest in this. We'll talk about Carol in a minute. He's cool. Who got her to see that, when she wasn't able to tell him what was going on, he's like, I don't care. He's like, I know your heart. So, you don't have to tell me everything. And she's like, when people really care about you, you don't have to tell them, or basically be, so, upfront, and you don't have to be so transparent about everything. And I thought that was really interesting. But I felt that whole scene where Ella kept getting upset with everybody, and she's like, I'm literally the only one that was not in the club. That is messed up. And I knew that was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. But I am glad that we got to see that Ella wasn't blindsided, that she knew what was going on, and she actually came to them and approached them about it. Now, Linda's been going through it because she, after being the therapist for the devil and God, she's like, normal people bore me now. I mean, what do you do? I'm not challenged as a therapist. Like, I can't do this. At first, I thought Linda was going to end up being God. I don't know why. It was like, because obviously I love Linda, but it's just the way that they were building her up of trying to find something more to do, something like her calling, basically, which turns out to be writing a book about Lucifer and her treatment of the devil, basically, which was effing hilarious. That whole episode where they were reading the manuscript that was not edited was absolutely hilarious to me. But it did show that, first of all, Linda's a good therapist. Linda actually, if you really think about it, though, some of the things that Linda has done is could actually get her, barred, but like sleeping with the devil, who is actually your patient, things like that. Probably not the best thing for a therapist to do. And actually writing a telltale book about your patient without consent, probably not the best thing either. But outside of that, Linda is very good. She was very instrumental in so many things, like obviously everything with Lucifer, she's always, instrumental in, but she also got Maze and Eve to realize that neither of them want to go rule hell. And because, at the beginning of the season, that's what they were going to do. And they had a dinner party. And then Linda was just like, are you sure that's really what you want? And Eve, what will you do down there? It's like they finally were able to say, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do this. So I thought that was really cool. So I envy that relationship. It's really cool. But so let's go back a little bit further where they had some issues, like a little hiccup, and more of it, it's because of Maze's insecurities. Like Maze, remember last season, she asked God to give her a soul, and he's like, I don't give demon souls, basically, but it doesn't mean you can't grow one yourself. That kind of sparked her into this whole, I can be a better person. She was already doing this throughout the seasons, but that seemed to really spark her to accept that maybe she's okay. But she did kind of digress a little bit. And that's only because we meet the character of Adam. So Adam to Eve, he's the first man. He is a mess. Also goes to Linda for therapy. actually kidnaps her for therapy as well, which is crazy. But we get to see Eve basically separating herself from Adam, which is very interesting. And, if you really think about that, the first man, the first woman basically establishing boundaries. I thought that was really cool. But what I thought was really interesting about this is it also triggered Maze, because they were talking about kids and all that. And Eve made a comment saying that she thought Maze would be a great mother. Well, Maze has been abandoned by her mother and is basically, Lilith seriously messed her up. So that triggered to her to basically be the one to reach out to Adam to let them know they were getting married in the first place, because she's the one that told him to see if he can come and sabotage the wedding, because she's back in that headspace. And so Maze has this way of self-sabotaging, and it actually almost leads to her and Eve not getting married. But eventually, she comes around. She talks to Lucifer. She basically gets out of her own head, and Lucifer helps her get her back. One of the things that Eve wanted was to meet her family, because she has a ton of demon siblings. She couldn't get all of them, but she got some of her demon siblings who also think that they're more than just soulless demons and assassins, to inhabit corpses basically and attend their wedding, which I thought was really interesting. Now, I thought it was really cool that Ella even figured out that they were zombies. She's like, oh, we're surrounded by zombies, angels, and demons, And Eve, I made up with the first woman. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. So yeah, Maze and Eve get married, and the scene where Maze is basically saying goodbye to Lucifer is very hard, because I'm sure that Leslie Brandt, who plays her, that was probably her last scene in the series, because the series was ending. So I think those tears and that was probably all real. So I really enjoyed that last, Maze and Lucifer moment when he's like, "You're my best friend," and I thought that was I love that moment. Okay, so we have that. Now, poor Dan. Dan was in hell. Lucifer saved Dan from hell. He actually took him out of his. You're supposed to go through this thing where your whatever your guilt is, or whatever your time loop is, the thing you're stuck on that you need to get over so you can get out of hell and ascend to heaven. You keep living it, I guess, until you learn to let it go or learn a message or whatever. Well, Lucifer pulled Dan before he could see it. And so most of season 6, he's a ghost, and he's struggling to not only connect with his friends, because, he's popping up and nobody else can see them besides the angels and the demons. And so because of that, he has no place. He feels left out. He's like, he goes to Maze and Eve's wedding, and he's like, they can't really see me. Nobody can see me, basically. So he's very put out. And he's also struggling to figure out what it is he needs to overcome to get into heaven, and like, what is the guilt that I have to get into heaven? And what got me was everything pointed to it being Trixie in this whole epic episode, because he's like, I don't want to see Trixie right now. No, my daughter, I don't know how to see her right now. It's very painful. And we're like, that's your trigger. But it didn't dawn on him until like literally the last minute, because, okay, so his killer, Vincent, he is able to escape jail. And I remember the last 5B, season 5B, Lucifer whispered in his ear. So he basically was being tortured over and over again. And it was driving him crazy. So he escapes from jail. And he's in this like store where he's about to rob his clerk. He's about to kill this clerk. He took the clerk's gun. And Dan jumps into his body. And so he goes back to Lucifer. Lucifer says, well, while you're able to touch and be in a body, maybe you should go see your daughter. And I'm thinking, did her dad not? This is one of the things that I thought about, that I had questions about. And this is just me nitpicking. But wouldn't Trixie have seen the news about who shot her dad and know her dad's killer? I don't know why that went into my head, but I'm like, this is literally the dude. And I know he was dyeing his hair blonde, but he didn't have a chance to, because, his body was inhabited before he could get the dye. So this looks like the guy who killed your father. But you're having a conversation like you've never seen him before, or you don't know who he is. And of course, Dan pretends to be a guy that worked at the Force with him. And he has this conversation about how he failed Trixie and, and how he wasn't a good role model. And then she said, yes, he was the best, and I love my dad. And after they have that conversation, he ascends to heaven, where he actually ends up with Charlotte, which is really cool. They get to spend their eternity together. But so that was my first nitpick. My second part of the nitpick is what Dan didn't realize is that Vincent could hear everything, that Dan was saying, because it's his body that he was possessing. What I don't understand And this is something I know the actress who plays Trixie was working on another project, so it was hard to get her in a lot of the season. But there are moments in this that bothered me. Like this one was particular. Like, so you see Vincent looking off at, Trixie. She's at this camp, science camp. I believe it's science camp. And I thought, oh crap, Vincent's going to kidnap Trixie. But instead he goes and he kidnaps Rory. And we'll talk about Rory more in depth in a second. Why did he not grab Trixie? Because they make it seem like Trixie does not have a big connection to Lucifer when she's had a connection with Lucifer since the pilot episode. On top of that, if we're going to be transparent about Trixie, two other things bother me about this. The last day that Lucifer potentially had on Earth, they didn't go and get Trixie to join into their little family thing. And I understand that she didn't know who Rory was, that that's her future younger sister. But that was such a weird thing that Trixie was not included in the last family outing that may be Lucifer's last day on Earth, because they didn't know whether or not he was going to die. Because he's supposed to not go to the street, the name of this street that I forgot the name of it, but it basically with this dental facility clerk, same corner of this dental place they went to check out, because that's where he supposedly disappears. And I'll get into that when I talk about Rory. But I don't know. I found that whole thing really sad that Trixie was not included. And then on top of that, they jump to the future. In the last episode, you jump years in the future. You see that Chloe is on her deathbed, and she's talking to Rory. So she's dying. Where in the hell was Trixie? And where's Trixie when her mom is dying? So it's like Trixie, even as an adult, was just like an absentee child. It was weird. It was like once Rory was established as another daughter, like Trixie was just like a side character. We did see her when Chloe brought the baby home and she kissed the baby, but it's just so effing weird to me. So I'm just throwing that out there. The placement of Trixie in this series and the last season was very off-putting for me. So I just had to put it in there only because, and again, I do know the actress had another show she was working on or a movie or whatever. But at the same time, if you're going to use her, put her in strategic scenes that make sense. So yeah, I had to say something about Trixie because that was really bothering me. All right. So Dan's ascended again. He's with Charlotte forever. Very happy about that. So let's go to, we're going to go backtrack. So let's talk about Rory. So Rory, we saw the angel with the badass wings. She basically kidnaps Dan. She first goes to Michael to figure out how to kill Lucifer. Then she gets Dan because, Michael's like a human almost did it. It was Dan. So she goes to Dan to try and pick his brain on how to kill Lucifer. And then she agrees to take him out of hell back to the earth if he helps her kill her, Lucifer, who we know is her dad. And of course, he pretends to go along with it to get out of hell. But what the stipulation was, nobody explained to him was he could only come as a ghost. And now that he came up as a ghost, there's no way for anybody to pick him up and bring him back down. So he's stuck in that ghost form because of Rory. So we learn that Rory is the future daughter of Lucifer and Chloe, and that she's pissed because Lucifer abandoned her. Just basically like Lucifer feels his father did for him. So he is the one thing he hates. He's a bad deadbeat dad. And most of the season, it's him trying to, first of all, prove, first he says that that's not his daughter. Then he figures out that it is his daughter. Now, when he was trying to figure out if that was his daughter, it was funny because he went back to 1999, before 2K, Y2K happened, where apparently he had this massive orgy and slept with a lot of women. So he had to go to all these women who all had daughters to see if any of them were his, and none of them ended up being his. He ended up helping one of the women find her daughter. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting and extremely funny. But when he finally accepts Rory, he tries very hard to bond with her, and she is not having it. She is that angry kid that's like, you were not there for me. We've seen this a million times. We've seen this at Charm. You're an OG Charm fan. This is literally Chris and Leo's story. We've seen it throughout history in comics. I can name countless comic book characters whose future kids just show up and they're like, you're no good, blah, blah, blah. So, that's always a trope. There's always that one parent that just F's up, and the angry kid comes back to the past to just tell you that you're an F up. What was interesting for me about the whole Rory and Chloe situation is it talks about fate. She time traveled. She was so angry that her mother was dying and the dad didn't come to see her that she literally goes back in time to kill him from her rage. But everything that happened every decision, everything really that happened full circle is because Rory went back in time. because she went back, she gets kidnapped by Vincent, who basically chooses her instead of Trixie to torture. They pluck some of her feathers because they know they could hurt Lucifer. Like, long story short, after she's rescued, she realizes her dad really loves her, but she also realizes that time is literally, there's no way to change fate, because her being there and not disappearing means that nothing they've done, preventing Lucifer from supposedly being killed, also preventing her from being killed, like nothing they've done has stopped fate from happening, has stopped Lucifer from leaving her and abandoning her. And then we learn that the reason that he actually leaves is because he decides to become Linda of hell. He literally is Linda in hell. He wants to save the souls of hell. He has made it his life mission. And so Rory made him promise to leave and basically abandon her to keep the loop going. And I guess this brings me to another question. Jails have conjugal visits. Why couldn't Chloe have a conjugal visit in hell with Lucifer? I get he had to abandon the kid, but why couldn't she just be like, I'm going to go have a spa day and then go down and get with her man? I don't understand that part, but somebody needs to explain that to me, because I don't understand that part, why Chloe and him had to be separated until her death. But yeah, I don't know. That was really weird. Like, I get for some reason you had to keep the loop going where you abandon your kid, which again, I don't understand why that had to be set in stone either. Time travel, the fixed points, all this from Doctor Who to the MCU, it changes per whatever vehicle, we're looking at. But like, I kind of feel like by Rory making their parents promise to be separated and him to follow his calling and go to hell and stay there, and the mother never seeing him again ever for any reason, is hard for me. Like, that was a hard pill for me to swallow. I'm just putting it out there. But I digress. Again, I love this show, but I had to say something about that because I don't understand why Chloe couldn't just pop down there and see him whenever the hell she wanted. I don't understand that. I mean, that makes no sense. But at the same time, because they wanted you to have this heartfelt moment where they were ripped apart and she raised their child all by herself. And then when she dies, Emily, actually I think she went to heaven first. So she dies and she goes up to heaven. And then, and at this point, Amenadiel is actually, he's God already. So he flies her down to hell. And I'm like, if God can fly down to hell, he could always pick Chloe up and taking her down there. I don't know. I just think it's like, I don't know. That whole part of it is weird to me. I mean, it was really cool that she decided to, of course, be partners again, because that's what they initially started being. He started being her partner when she was a detective. So she started being his partner, I guess, partner therapist in hell, because she was going to be the number 2. She's going to be God's consultant in heaven. So why not be the consultant in hell? Even though I will tell you, you see Vincent on the couch, you see, what's his name? Mike on the couch, all the people that did horrible things. He's literally down there counseling. And it's like, that whole thing for me was hilarious, that he literally became Linda. So if Linda takes nothing away from anything, because she was doubting herself, whether she helped Lucifer at all, and he gave her that thing saying, I'm a better man because of you. She also made him a male version of her. He is literally down in hell being Linda. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And now he's got Chloe with him. So, I mean, that's cool. That's cool. And Charlie got his wings. When we see what happens with everybody at the end, Charlie got his wings. I was extremely excited about that. You see Linda's like, oh, and Emmerdale's like, yes, you are happy. You're half angel. So I thought that was really interesting that, he was just a late bloomer. But yeah, there's so many things. And I love this world's definition of how all wings could be different. Like how Rory's wings were like these reddish type blade looking things. They're all based on what you perceive them to be. So Chloe was in her feelings about it because she's like, did she make her wings into weapons because she felt like I wasn't good enough to protect her? And she's like, no, they're badass because you're badass, Mom. I love the little scenes like that. And I love how Lucifer had performance anxiety with his wings when he was going to fly to heaven. So like all of these things were cool. I love that about this world. Carol Carol is a very cool character. It's almost like, Chloe was made for Lucifer. It was almost like Carol was made for Ella. Although my queer heart, guys, I'm still gonna say it. My private, secret, guilty pleasured ship has always been Maze and Ella. And I just really like them together. I love how sweet but attracted to darkness and goofy and silly Ella is. And I love how dark and basically deep Maze is with her insecurities and and her sarcasm and like her sometimes very questionable morals. I would love those two together. I'm not saying that Maze and Eve are not cute. That is not what I'm saying. And I'm not unhappy that they're married. What I am saying is it was a missed opportunity for me, because if you really go back to Ella's first episode and how Maze helped save her and her brother and all the banter they had, I've always thought that they were cute. And then like behind the scenes, I knew they were really good friends in real life. So I just thought that would have been a very cool coupling with a regular character, two regular characters besides Lucifer and Chloe. But that's just me. I really liked Maze and Ella. But again, whatever. I seem to go for these pairings that some people don't ever see. So, but yeah, Maze and Ella were my ship, but they were a ship that just never happened, sadly, unless you see them in fanfics, which is probably what's going to happen. But yeah, so Ella is happy with Carol. Carol, he's a recovering alcoholic, but he's very sweet. He's very good at his job. He's to the point. So, he's very direct and he's very understanding. So I think he's perfect for Ella, even though starting out, she didn't want to give him a chance because her last boyfriend was a serial killer. So she's like, I don't really want to do this with you because you could be crazy too. And I love how they went to his house and like looked in his trunk. He had his trunk. She's like, what if there are weapons in there? And then they found that there are basically bottles of alcohol that he's locked up. And he did that basically to prove to himself that he doesn't need a drink, which I think is very cool. And I love when she came clean to him about it. He was like, okay, that's weird, but I'm still into you. And I'm like, so yeah, Ella deserves to be happy. So, if Carol makes her happy, he's not a bad guy. He was friends with Dan. That's who Dan wanted to fix her up with anyway. And they initially met at Dan's funeral for like a millisecond. So I am completely okay with Carol, and Carol has proven to be very cool. So, but again, Maze and Ella, like I really, really liked Maze and Ella. So I don't know. That was a thing. But yeah, like I said, this season was I love this season. It was very well done. There are just so many things. Like my biggest thing has to be Trixie though. I just feel like Trixie was just like gone, it was like, what? Lucifer, this is your last day. Let's go to the beach with our daughter, Rory. We do have another kid, even though it's Dan's kid in mind, but you basically adopted her in a way. Maze is pretty much her aunt and BFF, but we don't need to bring her because she's at science camp. So don't worry about that. It's just like, what? I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand. The scene where Rory talks to Trixie about, how Lucifer plays board games with her, and she gets really pissed off. And she's like, you play board games with Trixie and she's not even your own daughter? And I'm like, wow. that whole thing. They pretty much took Trixie's attachment and role in this series and kind of put it in the backseat, which kind of sucked. Regardless of whether the actress had availability or not, they could have put her in the scenes that were very important to Chloe and Lucifer's family. Yes, Dan needed to talk to her. So that's not anything I'm going to regret, because that's how he ascended to heaven and got back to Charlotte. So I have no problem with that. But like all the other scenes she was in was pointless. And the few that she were in, I mean, she could have been in the beach scene. She could have been in, really any of the other scenes. So yeah, it's a thing, guys. I just have to say that. It's just Trixie. Like Trixie is just not, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I'm trying to think if I forgot something. I don't think I did. Obviously, I didn't do a full recap of everything. But let me see. I'm trying to make sure I got everything. I know the whole thing with Jimmy and his mother, Jimmy making all the horrible choices he made, and then them finding out the reason that he was doing that is because he had mommy issues, because his mom literally left him in a hotel room while she took off with her boyfriend to go travel and I guess do music or whatever, just abandoned her kid. And he sat there waiting for her for days for her to come back before I guess CPS was called. And that was literally the basis of his trauma that caused him to do horrible shit. So it was interesting. It made Lucifer see that there is a gray area between good and bad and in good and evil. So that is a thing. That is a thing. But yeah, Lucifer is now Linda. So essentially, when I thought Linda was going to be God, essentially Linda technically became the devil therapist, the Dr. Phil of hell, like through Lucifer. Because all that stuff he learned is through how she probed and prodded and got him to see stuff. And I thought it was interesting. So this kind of makes it seem like Linda really is the most OP person in all of this series because she's affected so many people, got so many people to think for themselves, got so many people to do for themselves. Yeah, she actually is the inspiration for a character in my comic book. So I have a Linda in mind. And I love this character. I think Linda's probably one of my favorite characters in Lucifer just because she is so like, she has this whole attitude like, oh, here we go. Like, here we go again. I mean, what she was telling the Atom was just hilarious. She's like, you really need to stop with everything you're doing. Like everything you're doing is just wrong. It's just all wrong. It's just all wrong. Let's just start from the beginning. Let's just break it down from the fact that you're kind of a piece of crap. So yeah, I really, really, really love this character. So I'm happy that, I'm happy everybody had happy endings. Essentially, everybody got a happy ending in the end of this. Chloe had to wait a little while, but she eventually got to be reunited with Lucifer. So now she's a therapist too, because why not? Why not? All right, let me open my comment box really quickly. Oh, dang, Lucifer is ending again. Man, I missed a lot. Yeah, you missed a little bit. Dr. Leonard Martin needs her own show, podcast, or go on over to Silver Lake. Yes, she definitely needs to be rolled around to a lot of different TV shows. Weird for me too. You must be talking about Trixie. I think Chloe would feel even more guilty knowing the truth and not telling Rory, but also visiting Lucifer while doing it might have been too much. I don't know. I'd rather have visits than nothing for years. I mean, that's just... And I'm wondering how old Rory was, because remember, she's half angel. She ages slowly. So I wonder, being half celestial, she could have been 30 or 40 when her mother died. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think Chloe would... I think I read that one. Sorry. Am I the only one who thought the actor for Rory really did look like Lucifer, especially in the eyes and in that one scene? Yeah, she really did. She definitely took more after him. Yeah, Rory's wings were so badass. I love them. They were very cool. Yeah, Maze and Elle forever. Thank you. Somebody else likes my ship. Oh, I love it. Yeah, that was my complaint with last season and this season. Not enough Trixie. Yep. Absolutely. So is Lucifer done for good? The continuity ends with season 6. Yep, this was the last season. Why was Lucifer on the chopping block so often? I don't know, actually. I can see with like NBC and other networks, they cancel all kinds of shows that are good. So if it was an NBC show, it might have been NBC. It could have been Fox. I don't know. But I know syndication, especially, they like to get rid of stuff. But streaming services, I don't think it was on the... Okay, so it made it to season 3, I think, on TV. And then Netflix got it season 4 or 5. I think it's season 4. And then they were going to actually end it on season 5. But then Netflix ordered another season. And so then they were like, oh, crap. That's what I read a while ago. And so then they had to come up with a whole new story to end it. Because I really wonder if they were going to end it with Lucifer becoming God and, Chloe becoming the God's advisor, basically. But then I always thought, looking at this, so Chloe was going to go to heaven, right? But she was only going to go part-time. Who was going to take care of Trixie? Because Dan is dead. I know she has other relatives, but I just thought that was really interesting that she was going to be like, part-timing it in heaven and being a single mom. That's so weird. As somebody who was a single mom for a while, that's a lot. That is a lot. I don't know. Barely Allen needs to schedule an appointment with Linda. The whole damn cast of the flat. Everybody in the Arrowverse needs to get on her couch. Someone needs to tell him stop running, try thinking. Yeah, he is the slowest thinking person in the entire Arrowverse. Linda would be perfect for that. She'd be like on the couch and she'd say, "So Barry, what are you trying to do today? Run back in time? Do you really think it's wise to create another flashpoint at this point?" I don't know. Linda's like, she's just OP. She's MVP. Let's see. I think there's untapped story potential with Lucifer and Constantine stories. Yep, ending without them having more time together. I did enjoy the cameo from Crisis. There wasn't a lot I liked about Crisis. There were little moments like that, though, that I did. So I thought that was really, really cool. Well, in perspective, it would only be for a little while because when she died, they would be together for forever. So 30 years would not be much in comparison. And after Rory would not be. Well, and see, I get that, but now I'm like, because when Rory came back, she came back right when her mother was dying. So I know the Rory of then knows, which means I guess time-wise, the Rory of the day before and then the past didn't know and was just angry. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a shame that both character arcs are done. Yeah, it is. It's definitely it's ironic that both Constantine and Lucifer are over. I mean, but who knows what could happen in the future on Netflix? I don't know. Maybe Lucifer can pop up somewhere else. Who knows? At the very least, they gave Lucifer's cast dignified endings. Very true. That is very true. Other shows haven't ended so cleanly. I absolutely agree with that. And I guess knowing that you're gonna, because like I think all the cast really thought season 5 was it. So knowing that you had that extra season together was probably good for cast morale. Even though it sucks that it happened during COVID. Because initially I thought some of it was Trixie wasn't around because of COVID, but at the same time, I read she was actively working on another project. So I think they had to split her time, which probably made this actress extremely tired. But at the same time, it's so hard not having her in these key familial scenes. And her not knowing that is her sister, and like everyone's like, I love how Chloe and Lucifer are like, no more secrets, but yet they keep secrets from everybody else. And it's like, that's what Ella, like, I love that Ella was so upset. I think how she reacted was great. I would have been so mad if she just would have accepted, oh, okay, I get why you didn't tell me why I wasn't planning the in crowd. I'm glad that they let her react the way she did. I think that was perfect for her character. And I wish that I wish people were just transparent, but it is what it is. Lucifer's actor should definitely transition to DCU. Yeah, I believe that, or DCEU. I wonder. He also should do a lot of musicals if that's his real voice. But yeah, I would be down with Lucifer being involved in any way. I would love for Zatanna to meet Lucifer. I think that would be really cool. I don't know why I want that, but I do. Like, I really do. Or do like a Dark Avengers and have Lucifer as a stringer. That would be not Dark Avengers, Dark Justice League, Lord. But think how cool that would be if he was on the team with Constantine and Zatanna and like just every dark Justice Leaguer you could think of together with Lucifer would be really badass. That would be a supernatural Suicide Squad. Like, I don't know. I'd be down with that. I would be down with that type of movie. I wonder if anyone's ever thought about doing that, because I think that would be really cool. But yeah. I mean, all in all, I am not disappointed with season 6. I thought they handled it very well. It's just the questions that I had. Now, do I think they could have done something a little better? Yeah. I mean, of course, you always want your characters to go out on top. Like, even when Maze was leaving and we didn't get to see Eve again, she was going to pick her up at this spa. I thought, well, that was a bad opportunity, but I get why they needed to do that, because Maze and Lucifer started that journey together. And to me, it was very fitting that they ended it the way they did. Just like the line where, Chloe first shows up with Lucifer, at the end after she dies. And she's like, I'm here to be your partner, basically, because he was there to be hers. That was a really good way of ending. So everybody's kind of ended it where they began. Like even Lucifer ending up on Linda's couch the last time, always where they began. So I thought that was really cool. And so, yeah, I kind of like the symbolism behind that. They had a lot of progression, but they also had a lot of kind of reminiscing scenes too. So a lot of closure. I would love to have seen while Chloe was dying, did Linda die first? like what did the adult Charlie look like? I would love to have that, like have Rory have one more scene where Rory and Charlie were like ripping on each other. Maybe have Trixie come, because again, Trixie, even older Trixie, where are you? I would have loved to have seen that. There's a few things I would have liked to have seen. I would have liked to have seen if Maze and Eve ever had children. We saw them, of course, continue to be badass bounty hunters. I don't know if Eve is past at this point, because she refused the immortality ring last season. So she's immortal basically, and she can die. And that's something that Maze has to accept, that, the love of her life basically is going to eventually leave her, age and leave her. And that's by her choice, because she's tired of living as an immortal. So I would love to see how all that played out. That would have been very, very cool. But again, that's just me being a Lucifer fan, wanting to have more and not having more because it's over. So yeah, that is a thing. But yeah, all right, guys, this has been my stream. I said I was going to do a season 6 stream. I'm going to do another one for Republic of Sarah this week, because that show is canceled, ironically. I mean, first season, and they got canceled right before their season finale, and their season finale became their series finale. And unless somebody picks that show up, it's gone. So, which is interesting. But yeah, so be on the lookout for that. But I also want to know what your thoughts were about this. Put it in the comments below. And did it end the way you wanted it to end? What would you have done? I would love to hear theories on how you would have ended the characters' like journeys, since this was the last season. So yeah, definitely let me know below. And as always, if it is night for you, have a good night. If it is day for you, have a good day. And I will see you in our next video, which should be coming up in 2 days.